Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our garden in Spokane, Washington, where the hardiness zone ranges from 5B to 6A. Look what happened since you last saw me. The forecast was for little to no accumulation, and we ended up having a huge snowstorm, and I think we got about 10 inches altogether. So this is not what I would call little to no accumulation, and I can't find anything out here. But as promised, I wanted to talk today about dealing with slugs organically in the garden. And if you might think that this is awfully early to be talking about such things, the idea here is for you to be prepared and know what you need to do ahead of time. So that's the topic for today. But before we proceed, I also wanted to mention that last week I shot a video on row covers. And it was on a very blustery, cold day. There was one thing I meant to include in the video and I forgot because I was in such a hurry to get indoors where it was warm. So I'm going to cover it at the very end of this video. And what is it? I wanted to show you how to set up hoops and row covers when you don't have raised beds in your garden, because part of the demonstration I did last week was for raised beds, which we have here in our garden. So be sure to stick with me till the end of the video and catch that part too. Well, there's no point in my talking to you about slugs outdoors because you can't even see my soil. But at least I get to be warm for a little bit. The thing about slugs is that they're just plain creepy and slimy, right? And they are nocturnal, so that means they're out and about in your garden causing damage under the cover of darkness. So you typically will not see them unless you really pay close attention. You might see them on a very cloudy, rainy day, but otherwise they're doing what they do at night. And during the daytime hours, they might be hiding under some leaves, under a flower pot, maybe under some plant debris, or along a crack in the soil, or at the edge of your raised bed if you have those. And so you really have to look for them. Now I should clarify that we do not have snails here in eastern Washington state, but everything I'm going to tell you about slugs also applies to snails. Slugs and snails secrete a type of mucus that allows them to move around. They have two sets of tentacles, one pair for their sense of smell and the other pair for vision. They typically lay about 100 eggs in the spring and fall, usually within cracks in the soil or under leaves. Slugs reach maturity in anywhere from 3 to 6 months, while snails take 2 years to mature. Slugs live for about 12 months, and snails can live for up to 6 years, which I think is way too long. In the vegetable garden, you'll typically see them on artichoke plants, beans, beet family crops, which are beets, spinach, and Swiss chard, cabbage family crops, which includes arugula, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, kohlrabi, mustard, radishes, rutabagas, and turnips, yeah, that's a lot, as well as lettuce, peppers, and tomatoes. Slugs and snails typically make jagged holes in leaves, as you can see in these photos. So how can we deal with slugs and snails organically in our gardens? Well, the good news is you've got lots of options. Eliminate any moist hiding places that will attract them. If you've got a leaky outdoor faucet near your garden, you'll want to get that fixed. Remember that the best time to water your garden is in the morning, so the foliage is dry at night. That makes it harder for them to move about. If you've got flower pots they can hide in or under, move them away from the plants they love to chew on. You can hand pick them, and yeah, I know they're gross, so wear some gloves. Or another thing you can do is trap them by putting some boards in the area in your garden where you've been having some slug damage. Do that during the daytime And then the next morning, flip them over and see which ones you've caught and get rid of them. Or you can go out into your garden at night with a flashlight and catch them in the act. Use an organic slug bait such as Sluggo. Why is organic important? The active ingredient in non-organic slug bait is metaldehyde, and it is toxic to kids and pets. The active ingredient in organic slug baits is iron phosphate, which is not toxic. Be sure to follow the label directions. You just sprinkle the pellets on the soil surface around the plants you're trying to protect. Okay, this is going to sound rather amusing, but did you know that slugs like beer? It's actually the yeast in the beer that attracts them, but you can take advantage of this. Use an empty tuna can or other fairly shallow container. Sink it into the soil where you know slugs have been active, so that the lip of the can is even with the soil surface. Pour some cheap beer into the can, but make sure it's not right up to the lip of the can. The idea is that they smell the yeast, come over to investigate, lean over the edge to get some, fall in, and drown. As you can see by the photo, it works quite well. You can also buy beer traps in some garden centers and online, but making your own is easy and cheap. See the large bag in this photo? That is diatomaceous earth. If you've never heard of it before, it is made from the ground-up fossilized remains of diatoms, which are algae. This means it has tiny, sharp edges which will cut into the skin of slugs and snails. Just sprinkle it onto the soil surface around the base of plants you're trying to protect. The only thing I don't like about diatomaceous earth is that when it rains or an overhead sprinkler runs, it gets all gloopy, which is a technical term, so you have to reapply it. But I wanted you to know about this product. Garlic oil is a type of plant extract, and it's available in garden centers and online. The smell of it repels slugs, so you're not killing them, but you're driving them away. Use it according to the label directions. It lasts for about 2 weeks in the garden and also repels aphids, cabbage worms, Colorado potato beetles, earwigs, flea beetles, and so on. And last but definitely not least are copper rings that you place around the main stem of certain susceptible plants. For example, these are great for broccoli, cauliflower, and kale. This is something that we came up with ourselves once I learned that the skin and antenna of slugs and snails reacts electrically to copper. In other words, they get a shock from it. So if you place it around the stem of plants, like you see in this photo, it will prevent them from getting up into the plants and causing damage. However, there's one other thing you need to do. Always trim off any of the lower plant leaves that would touch the soil. That's because the slugs or snails could climb up onto the plant by getting onto a leaf. So how did we make these rings? Well, first of all, it's a do-it-yourself project that's in my book, The Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook. That book is all about identifying and dealing with damaging insects, and it's in my Amazon store if you're interested. I'll put a link to it in the description for this video on my YouTube channel, since my book is in there, and there's also the copper tape under the organic gardening products category. But here's how you make the copper rings. We started out with some 3-inch diameter plastic drain pipe, which you can find at home building centers. And then we cut several 1.5-inch tall rings from it. Then we wrap the outer surface of each ring with copper tape, which has adhesive on it. And that's all there is to it. So I'm standing behind our little greenhouse, And right next to it is a flat planting bed. So it's not a raised bed, and we grow all kinds of crops in here. So let's say I want to grow broccoli back here this year. And boy, is broccoli a bug magnet. So it definitely needs the protection of some row covers. The very first thing that you need to start with is some sturdy hoops. Now you may have found some online or in your garden center, and you are all set. That's awesome. So two kinds that we have made are really tall, wide hoops for a different bed that are made from electrical metal tubing, or EMT. It's very easy to find at home centers, and we have a bender that we made in order to bend it into the right shape. Now I really like these because they're so sturdy, but to be honest, my favorite type of hoop is the kind that we made using black plastic poly sprinkler pipe. Again, available at the home center. You can get it in rolls, and you measure what you need, cut it very easily, and you've got hoops. So I'm going to use these for today's demonstration. We typically space our hoops about 2 feet apart. So I'm just guesstimating this, but let's say this is 2 feet. And then I would put another hoop and then another, depending upon how long your bed is, obviously. Once you have figured out where the hoops are going to go, you need to provide them with something to stabilize them. You don't want them to fall over from a windstorm and so on. So what we do is we have bought some sticks of rebar, again at the home center, and we've cut them into lengths about this long. And once we figure out where the hoops are going, we'll pound one into here, this hole, one into this hole, one into the holes for each of the hoops. That's why you want to figure out where they go first. Once you've pounded those in, this easily slips over the rebar, and boy, are they nice and secure. I would do this to demonstrate it for you, but there's two problems. One is the ground is frozen, and the other one is my sticks of rebar are somewhere under the snow and I can't find them. I tell you, this has been quite a week. So once you have your hoops securely in place, now you need some row cover. And whether you're using floating row cover or agricultural insect netting, which I'm crazy about, it's so important that you measure, we'll say measure twice, cut once, right? You want to measure them so that you know you're allowing for the fact that the hoops go up and over your planting. So what I would do is take a tape measure and give yourself maybe a good 10 inches on this side, whatever this measurement is, up and over the hoops, and another 10 inches here. And that way that 10 inches can be weighed down with boards or bricks or whatever you have on hand. And it's so important to do that. But again, measuring carefully so that you have bought the right type of cover and that you cut it correctly so you don't short yourself. That is so important. The same thing it has to do with the length of the row cover, because it needs to go up and over the hoops and down and have enough excess that you can weigh down. So now a quick demo of putting the row cover onto the hoops. And of course this piece is much larger than what I need, but you'll get the general idea. And it's easier with two persons. Once I have it on the top, I'll secure it at the end and weigh it down with rocks or bricks or boards. I'll weigh it down on this side, weigh it down over here, and make it a little more taut. There we go. And weigh it down with something here to make it secure. And voila. Okay, that's everything I wanted to share with you today. I hope you found it helpful, both dealing with slugs and also on using row covers in your garden. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening.